So where was it that I left off on Rosh Hashanah? Help. Yeah, I was talking about the fact that many of us are not feeling especially optimistic about 5786. In fact, many of us are feeling a sense of existential angst, fear, as we look towards the year that's coming. I know that I have a long list of things that keeps me up at night, and you have told me that I am not alone. Oh yeah, and my son Sam was saying, Abba, you're the rabbi. You can't be so negative. Stop telling people just what to stop doing. You have to tell them what they should do. What should we do? Okay, here is my advice. 1, do more of the things you love, things that bring you joy, things that your heart is drawn to. 2, invite others to join you. People you know, people you love, and people who you don't yet know so well. 3, do less of the things that keep you from doing what you love with people you love. That's the whole thing. It turns out that my advice for addressing existential angst during a moment of global rising authoritarianism and increasing political polarization, it turns out that advice could be the same advice I give you every Yom Kippur. Perhaps you've heard of the village of Les Chambon in France and the spiritual resistance of its citizens during Nazi occupation. This was a community of French Huguenots, people who had their own history of persecution. Before their town was occupied, their pastor, André Trocmé, said to his congregation, we know what we stand for as a community, and we know we will continue faithfully to act on these beliefs no matter what happens. What happened in Les Chambon was that a town of a mere 5,000 people managed to shelter and direct to safety approximately 5,000 Jews, one for one. What happened was a sacred conspiracy so infectious that even the Gestapo looked the other way, when it was so obvious that the town was sheltering thousands of Jews. I think it's very important for us to remember that our own uncertain moment is, thank God, still very, very far away from the conditions of Vichy France. But nonetheless, we have reasons to feel concerned. It was not an accident that the leadership for the righteous solidarity of Les Chambon came from a church, a community of faith, that had known persecution, and that the people there later described their actions as simply doing the next right thing. I'd like to take a moment to remind you, we are a community of faith. We are a synagogue. As Jews, we have experienced and survived and even thrived despite moments of persecution. We know what we stand for as a community, and we know we will continue to act faithfully on these beliefs no matter what happens. Being kind, doing the next right thing, it's not so complicated. And in fact, it's what Judaism is always urging us to do. Let me just promise you this. It is going to be simple. It's going to be as simple as doing the things that you love. 2, inviting others to join you. And 3, doing less of the things that keep you from doing the things you love with people you like. So I'm going to address the third of these first because it's the hardest, the doing less of the things that keep you from what you love and doing them with other people. Simone Weil, a French Jewish philosopher and mystic, a member of the French Resistance, wrote, "To become sacred, something must be consecrated. We consecrate things in the world with our action and with our attention." The contemporary writer Adrienne Marie Brown says it even more simply. What we give attention to grows. The problem is that we live with so much activity that drives us away from what and who we love. So let's just examine for a moment what tends to receive our sacred attention. So first of all, work. It's honorable, it's wholesome to work. It is reasonable and responsible to save for the future, for retirement, for a college education. But our work simply demands too much of us. It steals too much of our time. With commuting, with email, with cell phones, it can expand to fill all the corners of our lives, and too often we let it. And it's not entirely our fault, because in America today, we treat money as sacred, and it's easy. I don't need to even give you the examples. It's easy to see how often profit comes before human well-being. And this is made all the more perilous for us because we have an ever-dwindling safety net. Our creed as a country has become the accumulation of wealth to create individual and familial safety. And we're already some of the richest people in the world. And even those amongst us who are surviving on incomes below $30,000 a year are in the top percentile of the universe. And the other thing is that accumulation of money, the thing is that it usually fails to bring us the feelings of wellness and security that it promises. And it keeps us from spending time pursuing things that we care about, that we love, with people we love. And work is paired with another distraction, consumption. Perhaps you are a little bit like me. Maybe you get a small endorphin hit every time you put a new purchase in the shopping cart. An activity that suspiciously increases late at night, when we're feeling down, when we don't feel like working. Making material objects sacred by devoting so much of our time and resources to accumulating them, that is like the very definition of biblical idolatry. The thing is, I've just begun what is a long list of distracting false idols. And the thing is, I'm sure I'm not telling you something that you don't already feel in your heart. But I can't go on without naming what is perhaps the biggest recipient of our sacred attention that most keeps us from pursuing what we love with others. Finally, I know we love our phones, but we love them the way Lou Reed loved heroin. We are addicted to our phones. Yes, it is so great, it is so nice to be able to easily check in with our family and our friends. But have you ever been with your family or friends, a good friend, sibling, child, parent, only to find them not really present, staring at their phone? Or found yourself staring at your phone? There are no more horrifying words for me than, Dad, 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 quit looking at your phone. We know that, and if we didn't know it, statistics would confirm that social media divides us more than it connects us. We know that the apps on our phones are designed to steal our attention. We know that we look at our phones to relieve the slightest stress, the most minute boredom. We know we're addicted. Again, I don't think I really have to explain this to you. This is an idol that keeps us tethered to our work, an idol that facilitates consumption, an idol that allows us to doom scroll when we should be taking action, an idol that supplants our desire to be with people that we can touch. This is an idol. Perhaps that was a distraction. Perhaps it speaks for itself. The truth is, it's going to be a lot harder to break that addiction. We're probably going to have to start small. You know, I know this because this is my phone. But remember our goal. Do more things that we love. Invite others to join us. And do less of the things that keep you from 1 and 2. I told you, number 3 was going to be the hardest. So let's keep working backward through the list. Why should you invite people to join you in doing things you love? First of all, it's fun. Secondly, many of us are actually kind of lonely. Third, we all of us need more people that we can trust. Friends we speak to honestly and know that they will do the same for us. Rabbi Ariane said it last night. We want someone close at hand when we say, help, I hurt. Inviting someone to join you in an activity you enjoy is the very first step to building circles of friends you can count on for support. We can call this community, we could call it mutual aid, covenant, you could call it standing together. I like to call it solidarity. And I want to tell you that these ideas, however you describe them, have been central to Jewish survival. So solidarity. The first mention of solidarity in written record appears in the legal and financial documents of ancient Rome. Solidarity described a debt held communally with shared obligation to repay. French philosophers in the 18th and 19th centuries built a theory of social cohesion around the idea of solidarity. They believed that we should focus not on individual rights, but rather celebrate our natural interdependence. Rather than focus on what we are owed, we should recognize our debts to others, our debts to our ancestors, our debts to each other, and our debts to all of those who will come after us. This is such a Jewish idea. The Torah exhorts us, just act on our obligation to care for each other, to care for the vulnerable, to care for the stranger, and we will see we already live in a world of abundance. On the second day of Rosh Hashanah, we studied commentaries that focused on a teaching by Hillel, Al tifrosh min hatzibur, do not separate yourself from the community. Separating yourself from the community is obviously the very opposite of standing together, the very opposite of solidarity. One of the primary practices suggested by this teaching is that we must stay connected with each other, specifically when we are suffering, that we need to stay particularly connected to those who are suffering the most. One of the commentaries reads, "Do not separate yourself from the community, but rather share in their troubles, as anyone who separates from the congregation will not see the comfort of the congregation." Moses, even after his incident with the golden iPhone, all right, even after his incident with the golden calf, went down from the mountain and tied his fate with his people, even at their lowest moment. I will never forget, after October 7th, there was one young Muslim family who showed up completely on their own. They came to B'nai Keshet with a handheld sign, their youngest child in hand, to stand with us in our sorrow on that first Shabbat. Could somebody in the back close the back doors? Got it. Thanks. I will never forget how the following weekend members of the Montclair Interfaith Clergy Association showed up outside our doors to stand with us in love. It was such a low moment. They showed up when we were suffering. B'nai Keshet has very strong relationships with synagogues and churches and mosques, and this church is one of them. Another is Bethany Baptist, a primarily African-American church in Newark. We've had barbecues together. We've had them as guests for Passover. They hosted us on Juneteenth. Reverend Timothy Atkins Jones and I have preached from each other's pulpits. So in November of 2023, I called Reverend Atkins Jones to ask him for help. I shared with him how isolated our community was feeling after October 7th, and that we were suffering. And he immediately asked, "How can I show up? How can I be present with your community?" And a few weeks later, he came with his family for Latkapalooza, our Hanukkah celebration. Now, our latkes are pretty good, but for a member of the clergy to sacrifice his Friday night with his family to stand with us, that is empathy. That is solidarity. That was him standing with us because he knew that we were suffering. And as Maritza Guzman shared last night, we have kept building solidarity with Bethany by choosing to study anti-Semitism with them, by studying racism with them, and by continuing to simply just do things together that we enjoy. Solidarity is about interconnectedness. It's about connectedness between us across differences. And solidarity is constructed one relationship at a time. Its very first building block is inviting someone to do something with you. If we're worried about the year to come, then we should redirect our attention to building diverse relationships with folks who are just maybe a little different than ourselves. Solidarity is the melding of empathy and power. Empathy rooted in an experience of mutual obligation comes from an understanding that someone else's suffering is actually quite similar to your own. And the more diverse our community of empathy, the more powerful it becomes. The organization Standing Together was started by Israeli Arabs and Jews not only to prove that a society shared by Palestinians and Jews was possible, but to organize together to build it. And they focus relentlessly on organizing across differences. They're 50% Jewish and 50% Palestinian. Their leadership is 50% men and 50% women. LGBTQ folks and straight folks stand together in their organization. And in their actions, they have strategically looked for issues that just cut across the normative political divisions of Israeli and Palestinian societies. One of their very earliest successes was a campaign to increase Israel's minimum wage, a campaign that brought together Orthodox Jews and Druze villagers, Palestinians and Mizrahi Jews, working people from Israel's periphery with students in Israel's urban centers. They prioritize solidarity and diversity over ideology. They don't ask their members to take positions on whether or what the future should be, whether there should be one state or two states or 23 states or a confederation. They welcome people with radically different visions of what the future may hold. And they realize that it will be through their efforts to build a freer, more democratic, more secure, and peaceful coexistence that standing together will itself help determine what might be possible. I have to pause to tell you that we will be hosting two of Standing Together's most senior leaders, Alon Lee Green and Sali Abed at B'nai Keshet on Monday, November 17th. You don't have to take out your iPhones. We will remind you. But I want to tell you to come, to bring everyone you know, to invite somebody you care about. They are people who know how to smile and who are not afraid of each other's pains. You will be inspired to create your own version of standing together. There's a parable that Rabbi Nachman tells where he reminds us about what it feels like to be at a simcha, to be at a joyous event where everyone is dancing in a circle, doing the hora. How sometimes outside the circle, there are those who remain on the periphery. Perhaps they're shy, perhaps they're sad or melancholy or alone. Rabbi Nachman teaches that a certain kind of person is able to grab them by their hand and bring them into the circle of dancers in such a way not only that this individual's sadness is reduced, but that their dancing adds to the joy of all who are present. Number 2, invite people to join you when you dance. Invite people to join you doing anything that your heart is moved to do, anything that brings you joy. All right, we are finally ready for number 1. For my number 1 piece of advice for surviving hard times. Do more of the things you love, the things that bring you joy, and the things that your heart feels drawn to, feels called to. And I just want to be as clear about this as possible. Seriously, hiking or mahjong or Talmud, praying, singing, swimming, dancing, biking, baking, eating, protecting democracy, saving Israel, standing with immigrants, feeding the hungry, celebrating queer identity. I am intentionally mixing up our hobbies, our passions, our causes, our interests, the things that we enjoy that keep us healthy in body and soul, the things that we prioritize because they bring us joy. Do those things with other people and good things will follow. Rabbi Nachman's parable continues. When we bring an individual into the circle to dance the hora, so it is when we bring joy into our lives. When a person is happy, the melancholy and suffering are pushed to the side. But the higher way is to struggle and pursue the sadness, to bring it into the joy in such a way that the melancholy itself is transformed into gladness, so that all sufferings actually become joy. That's the way it is when you really enter into joy. The elation is so great that you change all your worry and sadness into joy. You grab hold of that melancholy and you force it into the circle. None of this advice works if we don't do it in a way that brings us joy. For us to step away from our phones, for us to break addictions of consumption, for us to find the security that comes with actually standing with other people in ever-broadening circles of community, for us to reshape, repair the world, all of this requires joy. Without joy, there is no pathway to empathy, no pathway to solidarity, no path to liberation. One final piece of advice. Our synagogue, B'nai Keshet, is the very perfect place to do all of these things. Synagogues are already countercultural. They're places that are values-focused. They're non-ideological spaces where we build meaningful relations across diversity. B'nai Keshet is already standing together with differences that members of my grandparents' shul, B'nai Israel in Council Bluffs, Iowa, they just never would have imagined. Gay and straight, atheist and God-seeking, Talmud-studying, Tikkun Olam-loving. We're racially diverse. We attract Jewish-adjacent fellow travelers. B'nai Keshet is just truly a mixed multitude. And I think it's important for us to not overlook the diversity of our ancestors, because 100 years ago at B'nai Israel in Iowa, the congregation was made up of brand new Russian immigrants and German Jews who had been born in the Midwest. It was made up of people who were poor and rich. It had grocers and teachers and bankers. It had people who kept strictly kosher and people who didn't care so much about keeping kosher. It had people who were trying so hard to be American, side by side with people who were trying so hard to hold on to their Judaism. They all stood together. Our synagogue is a place where we can build trust that's a mile deep. Because when we're studying or praying or knitting or dancing together, we're doing these things with the very same people who showed up or who one day will show up in our homes when we are mourning. With the people that we celebrate B'nai Mitzvah with, conversions, weddings, retirements, with the people whose names we read when we pray for healing, with the people who have made small gestures of care, a note, a meal, when we ourselves needed healing. In a world that's becoming more atomized, we're a place of integration. In a country that idolizes individuality, we are communal. And B'nai Keshet is also a place that allows us to build trust that is a mile wide. Our voice, when projected outside of our walls, carries greater moral weight because we are a community of faith. We will continue to build broad interracial and interfaith partnerships. And our synagogue is a great place to do what you love with others when times feel desperate because it's Jewish. And we Jews, we have a lot of practice living with joy in the midst of adversity. We know something about surviving tyranny. We have been resisting tyrants since Pharaoh. We know what we stand for as a community, and we know we will continue faithfully to act on these beliefs no matter what the future holds. Gamar Chatima Tova.